goes to her mother and says, "Mommy, what do you do every day when you go off to work?" And the mother says, "Well, sweetie, I go up to the university and I teach the students how to paint and draw." And the little girl says, "You mean they forgot?" And that's what I want to talk about today is the arts education, and particularly music education. And I will admit I want to talk about it in kind of a personal way. I'm going to share a little bit. And, I want to say something about education. If you look at the word education and the linguistics of it, in any language, the Latin root, the Old English root, the Sanskrit root, it all goes back to this idea of leading out, drawing it out, bringing it out from inside, as if you already know. And in music, this is more true than in any other thing. And if you think about it, if you love Beethoven, say you love that Beethoven Pastoral Symphony, Sixth Symphony, and you listen to it all the time, you could hum every line. But you don't know harmony, you don't know a dominant chord from a tonic, nobody's ever taught you anything about music, you can't read music. But if you learned what he was doing, and then you go, "Oh, that's what that is. Oh, that's what that is." Education is a lot of recognition. And that's very important that we keep that energy of a person being able to participate in the experience. That's the whole thing with music. If you think about it, anxiety, regret, shame, guilt, they're all related to the past. Well, not anxiety. Anxiety and fear, they're related to the future. But the past and the future are never here, only the present moment. And in the present moment, there's no place for any of that. The other thing we want to say about playing music is when any person picks up an instrument and plays it, only that person can be playing the music that is being played on that instrument at that moment in that space. As Oscar Wilde said, "Be yourself, everyone else is taken." So music teaches you this more than anything. I'm crazy about music. It's changed my life, made my life. And I want to say that music often starts in the home. It starts with the family. And how many people feel funny about music? How many people feel funny about singing in public? How many people have been told, "Don't sing, sweetie. Oh, shh, just pretend you're singing." Horrible things are done to people in the name of correctness. I always wondered why, when I taught at the tandem school or in other schools, that you'd go in the art room and you would see materials being used, people creating stuff, an incredible amount of involvement with making something, usually for someone else. You give it to your folks, you give it to somebody you dig. Then we go to the music room. "Here's your part, sweetie, don't screw it up." And why couldn't it be a little bit different? And it is changing now. Band directors are changing. There's an amazing man here in town, Greg Thomas, who we just cannot talk enough about. Greg Thomas, but this man insists on all of his students learning the fundamentals of music so that they have the language of music, the vocabulary, so they can create their own music. Okay, so I am going to share with you a little bit about my life in music and reveal to you that I was brought up in music by a genius at listening to music. That was my father. Now, my father was a difficult person, a violent alcoholic, and I mention that because we play jazz music. It comes out of slavery. It comes out of the human condition that is bad. We all have an experience of the human condition. We're here in a very high-minded vibration right now, but if we forget for a minute, I mean, some of the stuff we've heard today, you can't forget, that we live in a place where every person is at risk, really, for losing their freedom. Every person's at risk for being controlled. Every person's at risk of addiction. And so much of what we're given, in the media and so on, just becomes a huge addiction. So I know this is just preaching to the choir, and everybody knows this. But I mentioned my dad being a tough character because when he was a sober man, he was one of the most gentle and incredible teachers I've ever met in my life. And he taught me how to listen to music. Took me home from the hospital. He had 17 records laid out to play me. Duke Ellington's Caravan, Dave Brubeck, Charlie Parker, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, and Billie Holiday, Bessie Smith. These people are huge artists. My dad had great taste. He taught me how to play drum brushes on a tray along to the records. What you have to realize about this is in music, these little sounds, these little moments they're atavistic. They have some sort of power to remind you of something else. I'll tell you a funny thing. When I was playing drum brushes on a tray when I was a little 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and I do remember this because as a little narcissist, I remember people saying, "Oh, he's only 2." But that is so great for kids to think, man, I got something here. And I used to think that the drums and the bass were the same instrument, and I could not figure out for the life of me how I could get these drum brushes to go. I even thought I was doing it one day, and my dad was like, huh? First experience of non-communication. Anyway, I grew up with music. I thought when I was a little kid I wanted to be an actor, so I was always acting out the movie. And then I saw a movie about a trumpet player. It had Louis Armstrong in it, who was one of my idols from my house, Louis Armstrong. The artist formerly known as Louis Armstrong. You know what I mean? It's Louis, we learn. But anyway, I saw this movie. I wanted to go home and make a trumpet and act out the movie. No dice, couldn't make a trumpet. My mom bought me a trumpet, $15. I took this trumpet out. Now, I grew up in the country. My nearest neighbor was basically a mile away. We were listening to Charlie Parker 24/7, Duke Ellington, people just flying on their instruments. I thought it was pastoral music, not to say country music, but you know what I'm saying? I thought this was nature music. It sounded like that to me. Sunlight. What is more like sunlight than Elvin Jones playing the drums? What is more like leaves and the way train plays, the way bird plays, the way birds fly in the sky, and his name is Bird? It seemed like, so I had the completely wrong idea. As we know, it's really, I used to visit all the very gay places, those come what may places, where one relaxes on the axis of the wheel of life to get the feel of life from jazz and cocktails. The girls I knew. We'll leave it right there. So, that's Lush Life by Billy Strayhorn. And by the way, the man wrote that tune when he was 16 years old. Lyrics and music. He became Duke Ellington's protege, his writing partner. Billy Strayhorn was gay. That song is about being a way outsider. And you know what? On some certain tip, every single one of us is. If we don't maintain that status for ourselves, we lose something. Because everybody's alone in this world. We're all together. Music teaches you this. Jazz particularly is fantastic for this. It's a music that's based on improvisation. It is based on incredible skill sets that you have to develop, and the other musicians will tell you whether you have or not. So it's a meritocracy, jazz music. But one thing that jazz did, I believe, more than any other thing, is it gave music back to the musicians. Because if you know this, what was Bach most famous for in his lifetime? Mozart, Beethoven. What were they most famous for? Composing. They got a lot of flack for what they composed. Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven, all of them were criticized in their day. They were most famous as improvisers. And this went out of fashion, and we lost it. And jazz brought it back. We learned improvisation. So music is just a joy. It creates community. It creates a kind of spiritual connection. Anybody who has had a tune in their head that they love, not one you hate, not an earworm as they call it, but just a tune you dig, it makes you feel better. Everybody knows that feeling, walking down the street and just feeling it and feeling good. Okay, I've learned so much from music. I'm going to tell you 4 important music lessons that I had in my life. The first was at my grandmother's house when I was 4 years old. I always wanted a piano. That was not in the cards for us. She had a piano. It was the first time I was visiting her house. I ran to the piano, started playing, and then I heard the old ladies, my grandmother and my aunt, Philip, could you please tell Johnny to stop playing the piano because it's so abrasive. And my father, who's not great with authority anyway, as his mother, don't forget, saying this, comes into the sun porch where I'm playing and grabs the doors that were open and says, Johnny, you play that piano to your heart's content. That was music lesson number 1. Music lesson number 2 happened when I met my teacher, Boots Mazzulli, in the town of Milford, Massachusetts, a man who was born and died in the same house. These folks knew life. And Boots was on the road with the Stan Kenton Band, quite well known. He helped found the Berklee School of Music. Boots, when I went to him the first time, his first question to me, and it was stated very rudely, and I won't share, but I will just say, jazz is full of sacred profanity. We won't go there, but It is. And he asked me in a very roundabout and kind of vulgar way if I had reached puberty yet. Oh, I was a shy 14-year-old boy. This was freaking me out. Finally, I figured out what he wanted to know. Yes, Boots. That's how you play your horn. Don't forget that. Desire, hunger. Do you know what I'm talking about? He's got his cigar in his mouth, you know. But the music lesson that he gave me happened one day in my lesson with him. He said, hold on. He dialed a number, and he said, you got a minute? He put the phone down on his desk. He said, okay, confirmation. We started playing. That's what we would do in the lesson. Play the tune. I take a solo. He takes a solo. Play it out. Don't slow down. That was a lesson. It's not hard, not easy to do. We played it. He got back on the phone. He says, 14. Hangs up the phone. It made my life. I had a rough life. You know, I thought I was an idiot. I had 2 older brothers. I knew I was an idiot. You know, suddenly I wasn't an idiot anymore. That's personal, I know, but it was huge for me, and I've never forgotten it. The other thing Boots did was he started a youth band, and they did an advertisement to come up and audition for the band. 54 kids showed up, and he drove up and saw everybody. He says, you all look like you really want to do this. You're all in the band. And then he just figured out who could play and who was a beginner, and he wrote music for the beginners, wrote parts for everybody. That's my model. A lot of what I do is based on what this man did. Okay, third music lesson. I'm on Long Island as a young, aspiring jazz purist in New York, extremely arrogant and opinionated, I may add. And I have to play weddings on Long Island. Drag. So suddenly at this wedding come these 2 very Italian-looking widows. And if you've ever seen how they dress, you know, in the black clothes, the heels, the black shoes, the veil, and you don't mess with these ladies. And they come up and they say, would you play for us, please, Mala Femina? Okay, Mala Femina is an Italian song. It's gorgeous. And I had played it in Milford, and I hated it because it wasn't bebop. It wasn't Charlie Parker. So, okay, Femina. So we start playing Femina, da dee 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 dee, pa doo dee da do. And suddenly I look out, and these 2 women are standing there staring at me, and they are weeping. Both of them. That changed my life. I said, John, you've got the wrong idea about what this is about. Music is for people. It really made a difference. And the last music lesson I want to tell is of my own trumpet teacher in New York, Vince Penzarella, who taught me the best thing that any music teacher has ever taught me. Tell this to every musician. Never listen to what comes out of your instrument. It's too late to do anything about it. Okay? Instead, hear what you're trying to do in your head and play what you hear. And in your head, music can be perfect. It will never be perfect out here, and that's part of the glory of what we do. So those were huge lessons for me. Long life, you know, I was lucky. I moved to New York. I quit school. I moved to New York. I played with great people. I had amazing experiences, got to do this, that, or the other thing. Marvelous, wonderful. Fast forward to Charlottesville. I started teaching a lot. Musicians teach. I started writing a lot. I had opportunities to write. If I'd stayed in New York, I don't think I could have written all this chamber music, symphony music. People have encouraged me around here. Encouragement. I need it. So does everybody else. Okay, so let me cut to the chase. I have got some musicians here for you today. I'm going to just take a second. I know that you guys could probably deal with this, so I'm just going to show you a little bit about the music. What happened when I got my trumpet? You know, I went out in the back there and played the scale. What's the difference between that scale and what jazz has to offer? Jazz takes 3 notes and it lowers each one. You add that in and you get this. It's the blues. It's the sound of the blues. Then we get, okay, that's all good, but timing. So let me just do my little thing. So I learned, certain things we had listened to. My dad loved bullfight music. I learned that. I could learn that by ear. That note doesn't really exist on the trumpet, but anyway. And then, but I couldn't hear, Louis Armstrong, the Dixieland stuff was so advanced. Listen to Dixieland. We think jazz is like You know, they say a phrase, close enough for jazz. The little boy goes to his father and says, Dad, I know what I want to be when I grow up, a musician. Son, you can't do both. You know, that we have an attitude towards music in a way. This is hard. Listen to this, Louis Armstrong. Cornet chop suey. And then one last sound. Charlie Parker. Jazz has got a lot to offer musicians, and classical musicians. Start improvising. Learn the language, intervals, chords, scales, create, make music. There's one more development in jazz that was huge for jazz. Free music, free jazz. Of course, a joke comes along with that. Why do they call it free jazz? Because nobody will pay anything to hear it. But free jazz created by Ornette Coleman, Albert Ayler, John Coltrane, Cecil Taylor. This is a huge idea in music, that you can create the structure of the music along with the content. So, in fact, let's experiment with that. And guys, can you be quick? Can you take something? Jazz and music, it's all about oral memory. It's all about just being able to respond in the moment. Can you all sing something I give you to sing and just keep singing it? Don't stop. Just go. Loud. Don't lose it. Keep it coming. Sing it. Do it. They're weak. You got to do this too. Can you do that? Awesome. That's free jazz or free music. We just made that up out of nothing. So I'm going to bring my band out here that we started, and I'm just going to make a point. Okay. And I want to thank parents and so on who are helping me with this, because we're going to try something fancy here. But what I've been doing Saturday mornings is I've been hosting and not teaching the Precognitive Conservatory Orchestra. Because here's what happened. While they're getting set up, I'll tell you the story. I want to introduce my buddy here. Hey, Noah, come up here for a minute and just meet these people. This is Noah Ivory, and he's a great friend. And Noah started this with me. It was just him and me at first. He was in a piece that I wrote. He acted in it. And then we became friends. I started showing him some musical things. I said, if you know other people who want to do this. So he brought Justin. And I said, great, you guys, I'm going to give you a music lesson. You know, some people can afford these music lessons, some people can't. So here come these guys. I'm just going to have a music lesson. So I open the door. Nice guy that I am. Come in, boys. They go straight to the instruments, and they start playing. Where's the music lesson? There was no music lesson. They just start playing some amazing music. What did I do? I picked up my horn and started playing with you guys, because what they were playing made sense. And I realized right then that there's a whole precognitive sense of music that's very like the sense of language, that we all have a human right to this musical sense that we have within ourselves. And I encourage everybody to find it. Find your own musicianship. But anyway, we're going to take a page out of free jazz, and that's what we do. We play free jazz. And we're going to also try a little gymnastics, because we have 4 awesome drummers and we want them all to play the drums in this little piece we're going to do. So understand that the sounds we make are valuable in and of themselves. The sounds, listen to the sounds. Appreciate the relationships, open up. If you think you're going to hear something that sounds a little bit like Charlie Parker or a little bit like Mozart, you will be very disappointed what these guys do, because they do their own thing. But check it out, and Listen to how they do this and see what you think about this. This is the Precognitive Conservatory Orchestra. It's Noah Ivory. We have Hudson on the piano over here, Rebecca on bass, Jeshua on the drums right here, and Isla on the piano. But these folks are going to change their instruments as they play. And I also want to thank my partner in crime here, Chris Monson from the UVA Jazz Ensemble. If you were here this morning, you heard him play with the big band. He loves this, and he helps these people off the hook. Okay, here we go. You go over and get ready to hit it. And we're going to begin today's piece. Okay, let's bring out the chickens. Bring on the chickens. Joshua. End, guys. Stand up, you guys. Hey, Joshua. Stand up. Stand up. Take a bow.